Anyway, good morning to those of you listening. Classic Radio, GBN TV. Let me say good morning to Mr. Brian Grams with us this morning. It's all about Cooperative Spotlight this morning. This edition for today. And of course, Mr. Grams is with me this morning. We kind of rolling solo this morning.
Yes.
All right. Our conversation this morning will be based on meetings. All right. We're going to get a bit of explanation on that.
Right.
I've been told that, there are different types of meetings when it comes to cooperatives. There are 6 types of meetings. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's interesting to note.
Yeah.
One would always think a meeting is a meeting, right?
Yes.
So we're going to get into that this morning, the specifics of the meeting and the notification process and so forth that goes along with it. Mm-hmm. Let's get off with my first question as we start the conversation this morning. Mm-hmm. The first general meeting when it comes to cooperatives. Tell us a wee bit about that.
Yes. So morning GT. And morning to you listening and viewing public. Happy to be here on behalf of the Department of Cooperatives as usual at Cooperative Spotlight.
Yes.
Our usual mid-morning date on Mondays. Yeah.
Yep, here on Classic Radio, GBN TV.
Yeah, so we're happy to be here. If I'm sounding a little bit hoarse, forgive me. I'm slightly under the weather, but we'll make it through. Yes. The Grenadian spirit. So before I get into directly your question, I always want to start off with some qualifiers. Mm-hmm. Right? In terms of the listening public, the viewing public, for them to understand that there are 2 types of cooperatives. So each time I come here, I know for sure you will understand and you will know because you have heard it over and over, but we have to understand that sometimes different people are listening.
So true,
some
so true.
may not get it from the last time.
Because someone would think cooperative is always a cooperative.
Yeah,
so understand.
I always like to define cooperative for people who don't know what a cooperative is. And basically, it's a jointly owned, democratically controlled business where people come together to fulfill their social, economic and cultural needs.
All right.
For it to start up, you need at least 10 members, at the very least. But there are legislative considerations now to even increase the numbers, because sometimes people start off in groups, some vex, some fall out, some go away, things happen. So the more members you have, it is always
kind
good.
of maintain the stability of the institution a wee bit in terms
Thank you very much.
If you need a max out, you say 10 as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
But if there's more than 10, one falls off, you do not need to.
Exactly. So that's what it is.
If there's a vote of 10 that is always needed and one drops off, you're running.
So 10 is a bare minimum.
Yeah. So
right?
if you increase the bare minimum now to 25 for say.
Yeah.
If one drops off and you need 10 votes, there's always sufficient individuals to give you that vote.
Yes. So
I'm just kind of
saying for legislative reasons 10. But we always encourage more for exigencies and so forth.
All right, great.
Yeah. Also, I would like to mention that for the listeners, that there are in principle 2 types of cooperatives. Okay. Right? You have the non-financials, which our department basically is the regulator for, the Department of Cooperatives, right? And you have the financials, which GAFIN is responsible for. And most Grenadians are part of cooperatives. You don't even know, some may not even know that. The credit union is a cooperative, but it's a financial cooperative. And the Grenada Authority for the Regulation of Financial Institutions, they regulate the credit unions and insurance companies and so forth. Okay. But the lesser known cooperatives in the country, the non-financials, our department oversees them, and we are doing our best to try and make them, a little bit more used, a little bit more understood by the Grenadian masses so that people can capitalize on such a great business model.
And helping their overall success also. Of
course. It has a lot of benefits. People working together and so forth is always good for national development and economic development. So today, our task is to really speak on the types of meetings. You did state that there were approximately 6 types of meetings, so I will just get into a couple of them. And you started off with the first general meeting. Yeah. And basically what that is, after a cooperative is registered, registered by the Department of Cooperatives, whose responsibility to register really and truly is the registrar of the Department of Cooperatives. So they get this certificate and you can do business and you can proceed. Now, that first general meeting, based on the Cooperative Societies Act, number 8 of 2011, it is stipulated that it should not happen more than 2 months after you get registered.
After you get registered, 2 months.
Right, yeah, 2 months.
All right.
So you have to do that meeting within that time. Obviously, things happen.
You may not always get somebody again.
So obviously, things happen.
Some hiccups, something going to cause it.
Took into consideration that, it may not happen. So in that event, the board of directors of the cooperative has to write to the registrar of our department, the Department of Cooperatives, and explain, well, look, we're having a little issue and we may need some extra time. And based on the discretion of the registrar, it could happen after the 2 months.
All right, they may say you get another 2 weeks, so you get another month.
Yeah, based on the discretion of the
discretion of the reason.
As we go along, you would notice that the Act gives the registrar of cooperatives a lot of discretionary powers, and to really regulate and so forth, because as we say, things happen.
Yeah.
So you might have stipulated times, but life happens, and this is where the registrar comes in, and this is where the board has to communicate with him or her to ensure that things are in line.
All right.
Right? So in that first general meeting, a lot is discussed. So we'll speak about a couple things. One thing in that general meeting that is discussed is the appointment of an auditor.
Okay.
One would imagine if you have a business, you need to do some auditing, right? Keep in mind that the most powerful persons within the cooperative setting are the members.
Okay.
Right? So it's not a situation where there's one owner and that person can do whatever. There is a lot of owners or shareholders. And when you have that, you have to be on top of the books. You can't be playing with the books. So the first thing, in that first general meeting, who is going to be our auditor? Is it going to be Panelker Foster, Agostinian, whoever? Yeah, we need to get that auditor. So that is discussed at that meeting. Then we talk about banking arrangements.
And all of that has to be finalized in the first general meeting.
Yes, of course.
In the first general meeting.
Yeah. So what's going to happen? Who is our bank going to be? Is it going to be Grenada Cooperative Bank? Is it going to be ACB? Are we going to Ariza? Are we going to communal in terms of credit unions now? Where are we going to bank?
Okay.
Then who are our signatories going to be? Right? So you have to decide the president and the treasurer, the president and the secretary, the treasurer and the secretary, who that combination will be to ensure that there is transparency in terms of conducting business. So that will be discussed there. Obviously, the adoption of the bylaws, right? The bylaws are basically the constitution of the cooperative, and I think you would have probably discussed that in previous programs. Where you have things as what qualifies a member to be a member, what are the objects of the business, the nature of the business, what would disqualify you from being a member, and disciplinary procedures and things of that sort. Right. That's in the bylaws. So the first general meeting will cover that. And then basically any other business, right, will be covered in that first general meeting. So that's a very important meeting, and it should be done.
If I may ask a question, if for some reason you mentioned something happens and they're unable to have that first general meeting after our time has been extended, after the discretion has been given, you got an extra month or two to have that. What is there a penalties or anything that could derive to that particular cooperative if they do not have that particular first general meeting?
Yeah, well, what we do hope is that they behave themselves and they follow the legislative procedures and everything. But again, it will come up as we continue to discuss. The registrar has a lot of discretionary powers, a lot of powers within the Act number 8 of 2011, and there will be engagement there. Apart from that, in our department, there are field officers.
Okay.
Right? So the field officers will make sure all things are going as planned, as scheduled, and if it is not, they will do whatever they can to ensure that things happen
and really get off the ground
they get off the ground and things happen in a proper framework. Well, obviously, if they are not there is not compliance from the cooperative, there are fines and things that can be administered by the registrar of cooperatives on behalf of the department. But we don't want to get there. This is why we have very active field officers to go out there to guide, because when you start up, you're probably a little bit shaky as a cooperative. Our field officers will do the job, our chief cooperative inspector, and also the registrar, in ensuring that, we hold your hand and all will be well.
So that's where the Department of Cooperative comes. So they work as a bit of a father figure to a point, if I could put it that way, to hold their hands and make sure they get things done.
Or mother figure,
father figure. I understand that. Now, even from that first general meeting, there's what you call now the general meeting. Right. So we're going into this into another phase of meetings we're talking. And you said there are 6. Now there's a general meeting.
Right.
Give us how that goes, how that plays out.
So I don't even need to really expand much on the general meeting, because
it kind of speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself in that the first is what it is, the first general meeting.
Yeah.
A general meeting, it has the same characteristics of that first general meeting, but there is only one first. Yeah. So, in a sense,
you must have the first in order to go general.
Right. When I explain the first general meeting, the component, the content of that meeting, how it, how it goes about, becoming operational, how it's conducted, all these things, it's basically identical. But for the sake of explanation, the first general meeting is that first general meeting, and then after that, all other meetings will just be called general meeting. Well, it's basically the same thing.
I was kind of wavering a thought there in terms of the first general meeting and then the general meeting. In terms of, is all membership required to be part of the first general meeting? Or is it with the general meeting now, that's where all members is included?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes.
Sometimes they're just the governing body per se.
So in that general meeting, everybody is supposed to turn out, and that is a very important point you made, because in general meetings, really, all members are asked
to be there.
Or really, I don't want to say mandated, but strongly requested to really participate in that, because we have sometimes a culture in our country, because again, I will parallel the non-financials and the financials just so that people can understand. Most people are part of financials as credit unions. A lot of the times you have your money in the credit union,
yes,
right, and they have their meetings and so forth. But do you go? You mightn't go to the meeting, but some people are very circumspect with that, and they always make sure they attend meetings to know what is happening with the money, to give direction to the board of directors and so forth. So it's similar with non-financials, which we oversee, and the Act stipulates that, when we have those general meetings, all registered members should participate. And you would understand why you would want mass participation. I
remember you say that, because sometimes you think it's with the first general meeting, you're thinking maybe when you spoke, this thought come to mind. Well, you have to deal with the financial, who's going to be the accountant and all of that. So I'm thinking maybe you don't need the folks who are more of the in charge part of it. Although you said all members are important, being part of the cooperative, but sometimes there's as you said, if it's the actual general manager and the accountant and maybe the secretary, and so maybe I was thinking maybe they are the ones that are more want to attend that first general meeting. But it's not really like that. All members
all members are invited to attend, and this is a unique. Yes, they do have decision makers that's elected, and we'll get to that. But with the cooperative model, it's very much encouraged that there is mass participation, and that people have a say in how things operate and how the cooperative is governed. Right? So you don't want to have a handful of people that's making radical decisions. Whether it's good or bad, but you want full involvement. That is a definitive tenet of cooperatives, that there is mass participation, and everybody has a democratic say in terms of the direction of the cooperative. One man, One vote. Yeah.
And then we need to the third meeting, as you mentioned, was the annual general meeting, as the AGM, as some folks would say. You will hear it both from, you mentioned both the two types of cooperatives that you mentioned. They do have that annual general meeting. Give us a ball play on that.
So, an annual general meeting is so important. That is critical in all cooperatives. And that, as it says, is annual. So, it's once a year. So, a lot of preparation happens there. So, what happens, matter of fact, it's in section 42 of the Cooperative Society Act. That is where it's spoken of for those who want to, take note of that. But that meeting covers quite a lot.
Yeah.
It happens again once a year. And it's supposed to happen at the 3 months after the end of the financial year. Okay. So most financial years you'll have is 1st of January to the 31st of December, right? And the Act stipulates that it should happen no later than 3 months after the end of the financial year. However, as we say, life happens.
Yeah.
So the Act considers that, and notwithstanding what is stipulated there, the cooperative can write to the registrar and ask for an extension. And that extension can be granted by the discretion of the registrar, but no longer than 6 months after. Right?
All right.
Right. So the annual general meeting will cover a lot of things. What happened over the particular year, how much money can really be borrowed, because the board in running the operations will say, okay, well, we probably need about $50,000 to do this, or maybe $100,000. The members now have to give the permission via vote. As I said, one man, one vote for that to be done. Obviously, the financial statements, we spoke about the first meeting, the financial statements and getting the auditors and things involved in that. Now, the auditors will ensure that let's look at the books and provide financial statements for the membership to look at, to see what's going on and to evaluate where we at in terms of control of monies, in terms of, maximizing and optimizing our finances. So all these things will be discussed, and obviously you look at the past year, and then obviously you look at charting the way forward for the year coming.
And usually those meetings are open for members only, I'm assuming.
Yes. Also, I wouldn't say members only. Yes, you will have the members who are the most important, obviously, GT. Yes. But then you have different actors within the cooperative movement at that meeting to lend guidance. So, for example, most of these meetings you will have a representative from the Department of Cooperatives, right?
Okay.
You'll also have a representative from the Grenada Cooperative League, which is the umbrella body for all cooperatives island-wide, whether it's non-financial or financial.
Okay. Yeah. The reason why I asked it, because when you say annual general meeting, you're thinking, well, it's not open to the general public per se.
Yeah.
In terms of knowing the financials of the particular cooperative. If you understand where I'm coming from.
Yes.
So that's why I said it's open for members. So once you're a member of that particular cooperative, you are the ones that are supposed to be there.
That's fair enough. So it's for members, but you will have actors and players, important people from the league and from the department being there to add wisdom, advice, legislative knowledge and everything, so that the cooperative can move in the proper direction.
I'm agreeing with you there. Now we move to the fourth meeting, which is called the board meeting. Let's hear a bit about that.
The board meeting, that's very, very important. So with cooperatives, I spoke to the fact that the members are critical and essentially the decision makers. But imagine you have 200 members, people going about their lives. They have their work to do, they have their children to see about. They're just life in general.
Yes.
It will not be feasible for them to really be partaking in day-to-day decision making.
Of the
so
cooperative.
An important component of the governance of a cooperative is the election of a board.
Okay.
Right? And the board comes from the membership. So the members will know, well, who's the brightest amongst us? Who has the most diverse skill set? Who is good at accounts? Who is good at managing? Who is the most visionary amongst us? So then you will elect board members, and a board of directors based on the Act, it's not supposed to be less than 5.
Okay.
Right? And 5 is an and it's not supposed to be more than 13. So I call two uneven numbers, 5 and 13, and there's a reason for that. So maybe 5, 7, 9, 13 will be the size of a board, and that's for decision-making processes. So you don't want to have 6 and 3 say, let's go in this direction, 3 says, let's go in that direction, and you have a deadlock. Yeah. So hence the reason we have uneven numbers.
Uneven numbers, so they always don't have that deadlock.
And you must, on that board, you must have a president, you must have a vice president, you must have a treasurer, you must have a secretary, and you can have a flow member as a director, right? But those 4 are absolutely critical for a board to be legislatively constituted and called a legal board, right? So the treasurer, everybody, they do their role, the president, the vice president, the secretary takes notes and so forth. And the Act speaks to the fact that, you must have meetings, right? There are a lot of decisions that are taken there. The bylaws, which we spoke of earlier, will stipulate how often the board meet, right? But generally, we recommend that you meet at least once a month.
Okay.
Could you imagine a cooperative being run and, the board meeting once every 6 months? What do you think is going to happen, GT?
Well, there's going to be a conflict there for some reason or the other, because no one will really know what's really, because the board is responsible for the day-to-day running of the business.
Right.
And if they have to wait for 6 months to find out how your business is running, something would not be appropriate.
Yeah, so most serious organizations, institutions, they ensure that at least one meetings happen per month. And based on the operations and how things are going, you might have multiple meetings.
One may not be enough.
Little crises developing. Is there a new project that we are trying to undertake? And nowadays that is not as difficult as before.
So true.
Because before, somebody had to travel from St. Patrick's, we having a thing in the headquarters down in St. George, and I have something to do, that might be difficult. But in modern times, we have technology. You can go on Microsoft Teams, or you can go on Google Meet, or you can go on the very popular Zoom and then people sit down in the comfort of their home and they discuss the business of the cooperative. So that's what the board meeting is about. And generally, GT, we recommend as a department that a board meet at least once per month.
Special general meeting. That's our 5th in terms of the 6 in the series of meetings that cooperative have. The importance of that special general meeting, the importance of it.
Yeah, so there are exigencies. So we spoke earlier about the first meeting, right? The first general meeting, and we spoke about the AGM.
Yes.
Which is, think about it, it's once for the year. But all sorts of things would happen in a business, in an organization, in an institution, and this is where the special meeting comes about. It may be called by the board at any time, right? And it's normally on the written request of the membership also. So the board can call it, or basically the written request of the members, right? Once that there is a call for that meeting, it must happen within 21 days. I would say 3 weeks. So the board wants it, the members want it within 21 days. So special meetings, as I stated, GT, it's really to ensure that whatever pops up, whatever situation that happens, that outside of the hard set annual general meeting, there are avenues where members, board, the owners, the shareholders of the cooperative can discuss the business of the cooperative within a legal framework. So this is where the special meetings
come. So just in case there are tweaks that need to be made from the annual general meeting, it could be done at the special board meeting. If I'm getting the gist of that particular meeting format.
You're on the ball, man.
I'm on the ball.
Yeah, you're on the ball.
All right. No, there's also our 6th and final in the 6th meetings that of course be part of it. Tell us about that meeting that is called by the registrar and the reasons why the registrar will call a meeting.
Right. The registrar is an important actor or player in the cooperative movement. In this act we have here, in section 5, there are numerous roles the registrar has to play in terms of regulation, oversight of the cooperative, right? Things happen, and sometimes the registrar may have to take the bull by the horns, right? The cooperative may not be functioning in an optimal level where there is unity, peace, operational efficiency, and things of that nature. And now the registrar would have to take leadership to say, hey, you know what? I think a meeting needs to be called. And that's outside of maybe the members wanting a meeting or the board wanting a meeting. Based on what is happening at the cooperative at any particular time, the registrar could say, look, I think we need to have a meeting to discuss certain matters. And this is where the registrar's meeting comes in.
All right, it's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. And with the powers given to the registrar by the Act of Parliament, Cooperative Societies Act number 8 of 2011, one would imagine that in all meetings, right, you would have to have a quorum. Mm-hmm. So let's say you have a board of 5 people. We need at least 3. You have membership of 50. You need at least 20 to really have that meeting, an official quorum, so decisions can be made. With the registrar's meeting, the registrar can have discretionary powers to say, okay, let us forget about the bylaws for the time being, or let us even forget about the act, and the discretion of the registrar can come in and say, okay, there are only 12 of us here, but that meeting can continue based on the urgency of the situation.
Right. So and I'm assuming the registrar can decide they only want the AGM part of it only, in terms of the let's say the board of directors only.
Yes.
They could say, I only want a meeting with the board of directors. Not every floor member is invited at this one.
Right.
They could just decide how many they want to come and to have that meeting.
So that word keeps popping up, discretionary, yes. So that's where the registrar's meeting. Right. Since I've been a part of the department, I haven't really seen that being a necessity.
All right.
But it's there just in case, you know.
All right. Now, are there any specific timelines for notification of meetings to members in particular?
Yes, there are specific timelines. So, for example, special meetings and the AGM, one has to ensure the board and everyone that there is at least 10 days notice to the general membership.
And that's minimum?
Yes, at least 10 days. And you put it out via email or you advertise it in a newspaper or something of that nature. So a lot of what I'm speaking about here, GT, is related to the financial cooperative, because we have one act, right, that governs both types of cooperatives. Okay. So now, just as a little nugget of information, the department and the ministry, right, the leadership, they are strongly considering separating the acts.
The act.
Right? So you'll have one for our financial cooperatives and you have one for the non-financial, because they don't operate quite the same. So certainly there are situations where some awkward things happen, and you have to, instead of interpreting, it would be best to have a situation where the non-financials have their own act to guide them, so there will be more specific understanding of how to go about business. So we look forward to that occurring in the future.
But more or less the formalities of the meetings for both types of cooperatives is usually the same.
That is correct.
It's usually the same.
That is correct. All yes. Right. That is a comfortable fit as we speak right now, where it can be utilized and extracted from the act as to how meetings are conducted and the type of meetings and so forth.
All right. So, Grebs, I want to thank you once again. I don't know if there's any closing contribution you want to make before we take a wrap, because there's always a reason for someone who's listening out there to find out much more. Probably there's a numbers. Of course, they want to feed the Department of Property. They want to get in contact. Someone maybe sitting right now in the comfort of their home or their office and thinking, hey, I want to start a cooperative,
Right.
And I'm just listening to Cooperative Spotlight this morning, and I'm thinking, well, where do I go from just the idea? You understand?
Okay.
So share that.
Yes. So just for general information, GT, the cooperative department is under the Ministry of Economic Development, Planning, Agriculture and Lands, Forestry, Marine Resources and Cooperatives, right? The minister is Honorable Lennox J. Andrews. And that's just for general information. But if you want to get in contact directly with our department, call 435-8779. We also have a Facebook page. Most Grenadians, just as how they are in a credit union, most Grenadians are on Facebook. So you can go on Department of Cooperatives and you can get information in regards to our number and our email to get in touch with us. We are right there, ready and willing to assist in any way, shape, or form.
All right. So, Grimes, I want to thank you once again. A pleasure as always having discussions related to cooperatives. And, of course, join us next week for another edition of Cooperative Spotlight. I'm not sure if you're going to be here, sir, but...
you may see me again.
You may see you again. All right. Hey, folks, that's it. We take a wrap for this edition of the Mid-Morning Buzz and Cooperative Spotlight. Join us again next week for another edition.